When a celebrity goes on trial, American justice can become a circus.
This is Vic Morrow.
They complain the cards are stacked against them.
When it comes to entertainers, you got a real raw deal.
But prosecutors fear the opposite.
You come into a courtroom where there's almost a presumption that you want to acquit the celebrity.
From the early days of Hollywood
I think the jury knew that this man had been railroaded.
to the 1990s, the question remains, do celebrities get equal justice?
A judge who cares about deterrence can use you, the celebrity defendant, as his or her example.
July 23rd, 1982, about 2:30 a.m., on location north of Los Angeles, at the filming of a spectacular war scene for Twilight Zone, the movie. As bombs explode overhead, actor Vic Morrow crosses a river carrying 2 Vietnamese children. The scene calls for Morrow to hoist the children into a helicopter. Instead, tragedy strikes. Amid the explosions, the chopper crashes. Its main rotor blade decapitates 53-year-old Morrow and 7-year-old Vietnamese actor Micah Din Lee. 6-year-old Renee Chin is crushed to death by the aircraft. A shocked Hollywood community, accustomed to shining spotlights on others, now found itself in the national spotlight, forced to answer charges of recklessness, arrogance, and abuse of power. American justice would determine whether the famous director John Landis was responsible for the deaths of Morrow and the 2 child actors. As in all celebrity trials, the case gave prosecutors and public officials a chance to make an example of the accused. Among other things, the Twilight Zone filmmakers took heat for their abuse of child labor laws.
How 2 children could be working at 2:30 in the morning just blows my mind.
Landis, who had forged his reputation with films like The Blues Brothers, Animal House, and Trading Places, became the first Hollywood director to be tried for death on a movie set. He and 4 crew members, associate producer George Folsey, unit production manager Dan Allingham, special effects coordinator Paul Stewart, and helicopter pilot Dorsey Wingo, all faced charges of involuntary manslaughter. They expressed disbelief at being charged.
I can think of nothing worse than losing your child. And our hearts go out to the families of Renee Chen and Micah Lee and Vic Morrow. The idea that this could have been anything but an unforeseeable accident is not only wrong, it's bewildering.
I was looped into this, and how I feel the district attorneys decided that this is a guy we're going to get in there. I mean, we just want to whittle on him some.
He certainly didn't want to crash his own helicopter, and with the people on board. And also, he could have endangered, that crash could have endangered the entire crew as well.
Each of the defendants faced up to 6 years in prison. Their attorneys waged a long campaign to have the charges dropped. At a preliminary hearing in January 1984, Landis and the others entered their pleas.
Not guilty.
More than 2 years after that, in September 1986, the Twilight Zone case finally went to trial. A trial which, according to prosecutor Leah Perwin D'Agostino, pitted the people of California in an uphill battle against the powerful charisma of Hollywood.
It was a very well choreographed courtroom from the standpoint of the defense, managing to have celebrities present there, your Don Amicis, your Ralph Bellamy's, and of course the jury was starstruck. Listen, the bailiff in the courtroom was starstruck. He was getting autographs from the defendants.
James Neal, representing director Landis, claimed that the defendants were not responsible for the deaths of the 3 actors.
Unforeseen, unforeseeable, and even bizarre events combined to produce a very tragic accident.
The prosecutor countered that the accident was foreseeable, that on the night of the crash, just hours earlier, the very same helicopter had nearly crashed during the filming of another scene in which bombs were exploded nearby.
At 11 o'clock, They were put on notice that having that helicopter with the explosives was potentially very dangerous. So, did they shut down the set and reassess? How can we make this safer? They absolutely did not. What they did was, John Landis increased the power of the explosives. He added explosives.
Witnesses testified that Landis had ignored warnings from crew members.
People had indicated the intense heat singed their faces because the fireball was so intense, at which point John Landis basically said to them, and I quote, and I remember these words specifically, "You ain't seen nothing yet."
The prosecutor had her own theory about why the director took what she regarded as unnecessary risks in filming Twilight Zone.
The reason John Landis did what he did, and did the special effects and did the helicopter this low and had the children in the scene, was because he wanted to outdo Steven Spielberg.
The movie was a compilation of 4 different stories, one of them handled by fellow director Steven Spielberg. Spielberg was never implicated in the accident. Even so, his name contributed to a celebrity aura which permeated the courtroom.
The deputy sheriff on the case, who had been to the crash scene, who had seen the severed heads in a trash bag, who had seen the blood and the carnage, you know what his concern was? He wanted to be sure that he got a copy of a letter in a file that had Steven Spielberg's autograph on it.
Unlike cases where the defendants are not well known, when celebrities go on trial, jurors are more likely to be distracted by all the hype. The Twilight Zone defense team claimed it had no significant impact.
I'm sure that they enjoyed seeing the celebrity, but the celebrities didn't add anything to the factual story. They didn't add anything to the guilt or innocence of anyone.
At the time of the crash, the helicopter was hovering 24 feet above the actors.
How can anybody, any individual with any grain of common sense, say that it is not foreseeable or that it is not dangerous to place human beings 24 feet under a helicopter with bombs going off 200 feet in the air?
To bolster that argument, the prosecutor sought the court's permission to show the jury the actual crash site. Before the jury arrived, she and the judge watched as a helicopter flew over them at 100 feet.
When I saw the helicopter come in at that altitude, I was absolutely appalled. I tried to envision how I would have felt had I been Vic Morrow or one of those children.
But the jury never got to witness the helicopter in flight. The judge decided it would be too prejudicial. The defense argued that in any case, responsible Hollywood professionals had set up the helicopter scene and did not consider it dangerous.
People keep saying, helicopters, low, children, special effects, explosives, isn't it obvious? Well, it wasn't obvious to anyone out there because there was a number of people who could have stopped it and they didn't.
If those people wanted to remain working in Hollywood, those people better keep their mouths shut, and they did. And those people who did in fact come forward afterwards to testify ended up being blackballed for an awfully long time, and many of them lost their livelihood.
One of those who did testify on behalf of the prosecution was director Jackie Cooper.
I would have shut us down. I know it would have cost a lot of money.
The prosecutor grilled director Landis about his decision to use child actors in the scene instead of dummies, and about his alleged instructions to actor Vic Morrow to stumble in the water with the 2 children in his arms.
Mr. Landis, my question was, when you told Vic Morrow to trip, when you had this plan that he would trip, was it also planned that he would drop Renee, or almost drop Renee, or lose his hold on, his grip on Renee? Was that also planned?
We did not discuss dropping Renee, and I don't believe he did.
Well, you have seen the footage on how many occasions, sir?
As often as this jury and twice before that.
You only saw it twice before this jury saw it?
It's very hard for me to watch. I'm sorry.
Your Honor, would you like some Kleenex, sir?
No, thank you.
Defense attorney Harlan Braun said the prosecution was not taking into account the unpredictable nature of filmmaking, in which a director only gets a single chance to shoot an expensive scene, like the one in Twilight Zone that went awry.
A movie set is unique from any other type of industrial enterprise. If you're making Fords, you make them over and over and over again. And the way you learn that things are dangerous, you have repetitive conduct. A movie is different.
Director Landis did admit in court that he had made one critical mistake. He took the stand and told the jury that children should not have been on the movie set in the first place.
We decided to break the law. We decided wrongly to violate the labor code.
Before the trial began, the defendants had agreed to plead guilty to that charge.
Once you get by that, then the issue is, did we believe the scene as planned and as rehearsed was safe, and did the unforeseen premature detonation of the explosions and the other things, were they unforeseeable as we contend?
The most emotional day in the trial came when the parents of the Vietnamese children took the stand. Sobbing uncontrollably, they testified that Landis had never warned them about the dangers. During the testimony, the director was outside the courtroom, greeting Hollywood friends who had come to support him. The prosecutor criticized him for it.
What is John Landis doing in the hallway? He is shaking hands. Hi, nice of you to be here, as though he was greeting people at a bar mitzvah.
In her closing argument, the prosecutor appealed to the jury to consider what the victims of the accident would have wanted them to do.
Their memories, ladies and gentlemen, are eloquent in their condemnation of these defendants and their recklessness. And they cry out to you, John Landis, guilty.
During the 10-month trial, the jury had listened to nearly 100 witnesses and been exposed to the horrid crash footage dozens of times. On May 29, 1987, they came back with their verdict. All 5 defendants not guilty of manslaughter. John Landis and his wife embraced the jury.
Almost 5 years ago, an accident happened on the set of one of my films that killed 3 people, and that none of this changes that.
But the prosecutor could not help wondering if the celebrity status of the defendants overshadowed American justice. She noted the attention paid to John Landis, who appeared to devote much of his time in the courtroom to scribbling on a notepad.
I subsequently found out from someone who had interviewed many of these jurors that the jurors believed that what he was doing was writing a script of the trial, and that they were going to get to play themselves. But how could they play themselves in the movie if he went to jail?
It's easy to judge this jury and say, well, they went crazy for Hollywood. They didn't go crazy for Hollywood. This was a very bright jury, and if you have enough time with the jury to explain it, despite the public hysteria, you're going to prevail.